Hello, seventh graders. This is Miss Taylor. I am the other English teacher if you have Miss Broadus, and for my students, hello, I should sound pretty familiar to you. I'm going to be walking you guys through your lesson for Friday, September 18th. So I'm going to show you exactly where you'll be working and walk you through the activities. And the goal of today is to give you both time to catch up on your narrative if you need to, and to get you to walk you through how you're going to finish your narrative, finishing your falling action and resolution. So I'm going to walk you through where to find everything because we're going to use a few documents today. So if you are logged into your English Google Classroom, which you probably are if you found this video, and clicking over to classwork, we have our narrative resources first and then our modules. You will be finding the classwork under Unit 1, Week 4. Mine is not showing up yet because I haven't assigned it to you guys as of right now when I'm recording, but you will see 9/18, Module 1.16, and it looks like this. So I'd like for you to also go back and open up your narrative plan, which looks like this. Your Unit 1 narrative organizer, which looks like this. And the last one is the Three Sisters text, which is just the story, The Three Sisters, that we'll be using. So why don't you pause this video now so you can make sure that you have all of these tabs open. So if you complete this all, you'll have your classwork, narrative plan, Three Sisters text, and your Unit 1 draft organizer. So you should have the same tabs that you see on my screen. Pause the video while you get situated. Okay, so if you go into our classwork documents and scroll down to Work Time Part 1, reviewing your narrative. This should take you about 30 minutes. So I would say about half of our English class block, you should be reviewing your narrative in a few different ways. So you are going to do step 1, which is to review your narrative plan. And each step today, we have this checklist that you'll use just to make sure you have not skipped any steps, so that way you will be ready to move on to the next step. So the first is to go to your narrative plan. And once you're there, you're going to do these few things. You're going to make sure you've completed every box. And you're going to make sure you're using events from the Three Sisters to complete each part of your story. And then you're also going to make sure you click Turned In on your narrative plan if you haven't already done so. So I'll show you what that will look like now. If I click the tab Narrative Plan, you can see mine is blank because mine is just the sample. But if you have filled in all of these colored boxes, that means you're close to being done. But you want to also double check that you are answering the questions, especially for rising action, climax, and falling action, based on events that actually happened in the story, The Three Sisters. So where the exposition is really up to you to decide where is Esperanza going to be when she starts writing her journal, you do need to use the story and stay true to the story to find out the other information. So if I wasn't sure, for example, what does Esperanza think when talking to the Three Sisters for the climax, I might go into the text and actually read about what Esperanza thinks when she first starts talking to the sisters, right around here. So at this point, you should pause the video and make sure that you are walking through your narrative plan and adding any information or clarifying any information or completing it and clicking Turn In. If you already clicked Turn In but you'd like to make some changes, you can simply unsubmit, make the changes, and click Turn In again. So please take about 5 to 8 minutes, maybe even 10, to review your narrative plan. You can pause the video now and come back when you're done. So once you have done step 1, review your narrative plan. You're moving on to step 2, review your exposition. So the first step is to simply go to your Unit 1 narrative draft organizer. Once you've found that, you can simply just write done here. I forgot to say that in the previous step. Just make sure you're filling out your checklist to make sure that we know you've done it and that you know you've done each step. So there are 5 things to check for your exposition. Now, if you are behind and you do not have an exposition, your first step is to draft it. So you would go into your Unit 1 draft organizer and type your exposition here. Now, one thing Ms. Broadus and I are noticing is that some people are really rushing through their exposition. So if you are looking at your narrative plan, your exposition is really only covering the basics of how the journal starts, where Esperanza is, and how she's feeling. It doesn't get into any of the plot points from the story. So we don't even meet the 3 sisters until the end of the rising action. So if you've already introduced the 3 sisters, you need to slow down and add a little bit more description of how Esperanza's feeling when she starts her journal entry. So if you are looking at your plan with every step, that is going to help you make sure you're pacing yourself and not rushing through the events. So if we are just focusing on the exposition, that is what you should be drafting here. Going back to your checklist, so I know I'm clicking through a lot of documents. I just want to show you kind of all of the things you could look at to help you here. The checklist, make sure that you start your exposition with Dear Journal or Dear Diary because you want to make sure it is clear this is a journal entry. You should be writing from Esperanza's point of view, so we should see I instead of Esperanza. Your exposition should introduce where she is, when she's writing her journal entry, is it the next day, is it a week from when this happened, and how she's feeling. And then the last step is to make sure you are not rushing through and adding more plot elements in your exposition. So you don't want to rush into describing what happens with the 3 sisters yet. So for the next 5 to 10 minutes, I want you to pause and review your exposition using this checklist, looking back at your narrative plan and making sure that right here you have the best exposition you possibly can write. Pause the video while you do that. The next step is step 3. We're reviewing our rising action. So again, if this is a step you did not get to on Thursday, you would need to first do that. Then you can use this checklist to ensure that you've done a great job on your rising action. So once again, you're going to go to your Unit 1 narrative draft organizer, read through your rising action, make sure your rising action explains that Esperanza went to Rachel and Lucy's house after their sister died, explain how she feels about that, and try to include a description. Introduce the 3 sisters and explain what Esperanza thinks when she sees the 3 sisters. Now, I got these parts of the checklist from what you already had planned in your plan. So if you include information from your plan, and that is based on the text, then you'll be good to go for your rising action. You can pause the video while you draft your rising action. The last step of reviewing your previous writing is reviewing your climax. So you're going to follow essentially the same steps, but there's obviously a new checklist that's going to guide you through what should happen in your climax of your journal entry. And really, this is the moment where Esperanza makes a wish, and I want you to describe how she feels after making that wish. And this is also not something that you are really inventing on your own. You're using the text. You may have to make an inference for what you think Esperanza wished for, but her reaction is in the text. So you're going to take a look at the text if you're feeling stuck. Take a look at your climax organizer and make sure you have an excellent climax written right here. And you can pause the video while you click through your climax, making sure you have the best one written, using your narrative plan, and using the checklist in our document. So our second half of our work time is going to be to draft your following action and resolution. Now we are hoping that you are just thinking through this as a draft. It is okay if you are unsure about how to end this journal entry. We would just love for you to have your best attempt, knowing that we're going to be going back and revising. So everyone has to have an attempt by class on Monday. So the directions for the remaining activities are to reread our prompt, paying careful attention to what is highlighted, and I'll show you in a second. Reread the directions for following action and resolution, and then try drafting it in your Unit 1 narrative draft. So my page got a little cut off, so you're going to keep scrolling. So the first step is to read the prompt, and there is a specific part of the prompt that is highlighted here based on what you're going to need to do in following action and resolution. So we know we're writing a journal entry from Esperanza's point of view after she meets the three sisters, but this highlighted part is super important for us. In your journal entry, be sure to describe how Esperanza feels and what she has learned from this experience. This is what we have to try to reveal in following action and resolution. So if you scroll down to step 2, we're going to read these two descriptions of what following action is and what resolution is before we start trying it out ourselves. So read along with me. Following action is the part of the story that reveals how a character responds to a conflict or a challenge. It shows the character learning or evolving in some way. This is often when a theme is revealed based on what a character experiences and what they learn. And the resolution is the end of the story. We end up knowing what happens to the main characters, and we know how the conflict impacted the main character. So if you need to reread that, go ahead and pause, but I'm going to move on to instructions for step 3 to review your plan in the narrative plan document. It looks like this, because if you'll notice that this plan already has you thinking through how does Esperanza react to her making her wish and what does she learn from this. So after you go into your plan and kind of review what you had already planned out based on, once again, what happens in the text, you're going to go on to step 4. And step 4 is drafting your following action. Now, no one has done this yet unless you moved ahead. So you should be scrolling down and having a fresh box to type in right here for following action. There's a checklist for you here that also prompts you of when you should be looking back in the text to figure out what did Esperanza say or what did she actually do in this moment. So go ahead and pause while you draft your following action for the next 5 to 10 minutes. And if you're back, that means you are ready to draft your resolution. So this one, resolutions are pretty short. So you are essentially going to stamp what does Esperanza learn and how was she impacted by her interactions with the three sisters. I highly recommend reviewing your plan once again and making sure it aligns with what actually happened in the end of the text. So that's why it's really important to have these documents open. I've been clicking back and forth between them. I know that's difficult to manage, but if you really think through what do I need, what information do I need from each tab, it should be pretty manageable. So the last step of the day is to take another 5, maybe 5 to 8 minutes this time to draft your resolution here. You may pause while you are doing that and make sure you come back to close out, making sure you know exactly what you need to turn in today. So if you've made it back here, that means you have turned in your plan, completed your exposition, completed your rising action and climax, completed your following action and resolution, and now you are ready to click turn in just on today's document. You do not need to click turn in on your narrative draft yet because we're going to be revising it next week. You don't need to click turn in on the text, and you don't need to click turn in on the narrative. Well, you do need to click turn in on the narrative plan, but you should have done that before. I'm so excited to see what you all wrote today. Thank you for working hard, and we can't wait to be back with you guys on Monday. Have a great weekend.